this is Steve, and he is the dispatcher for half the railroad.
Okay.
So he's the guy. You see the radio he has on. The engineers are now out there. They should have radios on. So he's the guy who gives people permission to be in various places. And he does so by putting little magnets on a large version of the layout plan.
Okay.
And that tells him who's allowed to be where. And then you see Bill in the in the safety vest sitting there.
Oh, he's the second dispatcher?
No, he's the traffic supervisor.
Okay.
So his job is to make sure we don't have too many or too few trains on the railroad. This is the largest one we know of in North America. It's about 415 feet of mainline track, not counting both directions. So that's a foot of track and that's a foot of track. The Europeans are much more into modular railroading than the North Americans, and there's one, I think it's in Hamburg, where they're at least 50% bigger than this and perhaps 100% bigger than this, because they will attract people from all over Europe. This is a series of modules built to a set of standards. And we have two types of modules within the standard. We have what we call conventional and Fremo. These are the conventional ones. They generally have a two-track main line coming off and on the module. The space between the tracks, the space from the front, the wiring connections underneath, everything is specified in the standard. Whether the modules curve or not is kind of open-ended.
Okay.
The other type we have, the Fremo, has a single track in the middle of the module. Okay. And this particular module is one of the transition ones where you see it brings the two-track main on in the right place and it sends the single-track main off in the right place. So the front of the module actually bends. The modules are largely owned by members, although the club owns a significant number of them. Because as people come and go in the club, there are modules we either have to build to make things work, such as some of the larger bridges, which we'll see later on, or people are leaving and we can't afford to lose the modules. At one point, the club actually, I think, owned this set, but we found a member to take it over. But without the transition module, we can't have both the single track and the double track main line in the same railroad at the same time. The standards specify that modules come in 2-foot increments. So you can have a 2-foot, a 4-foot, a 6-foot, an 8-foot, a 10-foot, a 12-foot, a what have you. Well, for all intents and purposes, this is a, 4, 8, this is a 10-foot module. It's just broken into 3 pieces so he can fit it in his car and transport it back and forth. So the notion of a module versus a section is a little bit tenuous, because this is literally a 2-foot module and it's also a single freestanding piece. So we have a combination of fantasy and what we call prototypical, which is actually trying to model something real and identifiable.
Yeah.
So this one is almost prototypical in that Colonnade Road out here in the south end of Ottawa has a propane dealer and has the tank farm. It just doesn't have the double track railroad running through it. It has a single track railroad running through the backside of it.
Yeah.
We hover around 45 members, and we're usually gaining and losing 2 to 3 a year. It depends on circumstances. You know, as people's lives evolve or their interests or work. Most people work on their modules individually, but it's not unusual for 3 or 4 people to get together and work on each other's modules as they see fit. You know, I go and work on people's modules because I can deal with electricity, and I work through the mechanical aspects of getting things to line up and meet grades and separations and that sort of stuff. Other people are much more interested in putting down grass or making rocks or painting backdrops. So it's cooperative and solitary at the same time. The frame, the wood, the foam, the track on it, it runs about $200 to get all the bits and pieces together to make a very basic, undecorated module.
Okay.
Like, you see just beyond all the lights here, those next two with the track on but no buildings,
Yeah.
$200 plus the time to get to that point. Locomotives
Yes.
run anywhere from $50 to about $1,500, depending on sophistication and level of detail, sound, rarity, etc., etc., etc. Most of the locomotives that you'll see running around today have sound in them.
Yeah, I'll show you where.
It's all DCC, which is digital command control.
Okay.
So what that means is the track of the railroad is actually a network, and there are little computers inside each locomotive, and there is a throttle. That is a car card. It tells us, it identifies the car and its owner.
Okay.
And you notice it says return empty too. Part of what we do here is the cars on the railroad all have destinations. So this is actually a train. This identifies the train, where it's going, what it's supposed to do.
Okay.
Okay? This is a car card with a waybill in it.
Yep.
Now, it identifies the car number, tells you who owns it. PH, its instructions are over here.
Yep.
NTC paper mill, which is actually this paper mill we were just looking at earlier. Okay?
Yep.
So it tells you it's going there, PJ going the same place, and then PA, BB, and PC are all going over there.
Okay. Chopped up.
Generally, we assign the train to an engineer, a member,
Dude with that remote control.
a dude with a throttle in his hand. Okay? And then they take the train and follow the instructions and eventually bring the train back to the yard where we'll take it apart and build a new one. And
Okay.
we ended up one day where we had to have an extra 2-foot module. Somebody had something in the basement which was close, so bam, 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 in 4 hours you kind of put it together, and then over the next year or so it acquires a building and a tree and a little bit of grass. But one of the beauties of having standards is you can do that very quickly.